Madam President, Madam Chair, honorable members and guests, good evening. Thank you for inviting me this evening, and I apologize in advance for a little bit of a scratchy throat. Let me tell you a story. The following is from a review of a book, When the Nazis Came to Skokie, by Philippa Strum. I found it on the University Press of Kansas website. In the Chicago suburb of Skokie, 1 out of every 6 Jewish citizens in the late 1970s was a survivor, or was directly related to a survivor of the Holocaust. These victims of terror had resettled in America expecting to lead peaceful lives free from persecution. But their safe haven was shattered when a neo-Nazi group announced its intention to parade there in 1977. Strum's retelling of the events in Skokie and in the courts shows why the case ignited such enormous controversy and challenged our understanding of and commitment to First Amendment values. The debate was clear-cut. American Nazis claimed the right of free speech, while their Jewish targets, and that's a quote in the review, claimed the right to live without intimidation. The town, arguing the march would assault the sensibilities of its citizens and spark violence, managed to win a court injunction against the marchers. In response, the American Civil Liberties Union took the case and successfully defended the Nazis' right to free speech. Skokie had all the elements of a difficult case: a clash of absolutes, prior restraint of speech, and heated public sentiment. In recreating it, Strum presents a detailed account and analysis of the legal proceedings, as well as finely delineated portraits of the protagonists: Frank Collin, National Socialist Party of America leader and son of a Jewish Holocaust survivor; Skokie community leader Saul Goldstein, a Holocaust survivor who planned a counter-demonstration march against the Nazis; Skokie Mayor Albert Smith, who only wanted to protect his townspeople; and ACLU attorney David Goldberger, caught in the ironic position of being a Jew defending the rights of Nazis against fellow Jews. While the ACLU did win the case, it was a costly victory. 30,000 of its members left the organization. And in the end, ironically, the Nazis never did march in Skokie. They were scheduled to march on June 25th, 1978, but ended up marching in Chicago's Marquette Park after Chicago relented and let the group move the march. Strum's book shows that freedom of speech must be defended even when the beneficiaries of that defense are far from admirable individuals. It raises both constitutional and moral issues critical to our understanding of free speech. It carries important lessons for current controversies over hate speech on college campuses, inviting readers to think more carefully about what the First Amendment really means. Now let me tell you another story. When this was happening in Skokie, I was 23 years old. I was raised in a Jewish home, even though we were not very religious, but I was proud of my heritage. As the media interest grew close to that June 25th March date, I was living in Redlands, California, about 90 miles east of my native Los Angeles. I'd been married a couple of months to a woman I met in journalism school at Cal State Northridge. She was Catholic and of German descent. I was watching a news report about the Skokie March back in the dark ages when we did not have 500 channels. I got angry. I got real angry. I got medieval angry. I started stomping around the house, yelling about what a travesty this was and how there ought to be a law keeping those Nazi scum from being able to do this. At some point during my rant, my wife looked at me and tossed on a gallon of gasoline. She said something along the lines of, "Don't they have the same freedom of speech you do?" By the time I came down from circling the solar system, we had one hell of an argument. I was right. She didn't budge. We shouldn't allow this. Why was I so adamant? I had 3 relatives I never got to meet because they perished in the death camps of the Holocaust. Nazis have no rights. Martha stuck to her argument. American Nazis do. And if you call yourself a journalist, you should understand that. Eventually, I calmed down. Eventually, I came to see Martha was right. And let me tell you, Martha was somebody who was sensitive to hate speech. Long before we dated, she had a long-term boyfriend growing up in Pasadena, California, who was African American. and she told a number of stories of people who came up to them and said horrible things. So she taught me a lesson that day that has remained with me since. That lesson lasted a lot longer than our marriage. We have a great kid, though, a senior at San Francisco State. That lesson is this: the First Amendment is more important than hate speech. That's not to say I easily dismiss hate speech. I still get angry when I see Nazis, white supremacists, and other idiots spewing their filth. It hurts. It's awful. It's easy to say we should have a law. But where do we draw the line? I think we could easily agree on some things fitting into a hate speech law. You've heard the words. But where do we draw the line when we go beyond that? Some people have already talked about that. And does the law create martyrs for some of these racists? That's the problem. Plus, I don't trust our government to make this decision. So do we do nothing about hate speech? Not exactly. Let me tell you one more story. Before coming to the Pantagraph, I was editor of The Truth, a daily newspaper in Elkhart, Indiana. And yes, that's the paper's real name. On the Saturday before Easter Sunday, the Ku Klux Klan planned a march in downtown Elkhart. Big controversy. Should they be allowed to march? Would others show up and shout them down? Would there be violence? The KKK held their demonstration. A small group of people showed up to shout at them. But a mile or so away at a local junior high school, a whole lot more people showed up for a diversity celebration. What was on the Easter Sunday front page of The Truth? The diversity celebration was played above the KKK event. We still had the KKK on the bottom of the front page because it was a big controversial story. And we had discussions about where we should play it. We even had pictures of one of the KKK members in his hood, but it was on what we called the jump page where the story was continued. Yes, the KKK had freedom of speech, but I was not going to have a hooded Klansman on the front page of our paper on Easter Sunday. And I wrote a column about that also and had a lot of readers respond that they appreciated that. So we covered it, but we showed that as far as the majority of our community was concerned, these idiots were a very small minority. Once the KKK realized they couldn't get a rise out of the majority of Elkhart County, we didn't hear from them as much. This is not to say we should ignore these people. We need to make sure people know what they are saying, the filth they are spewing, because their own actions are the second best weapon against them. The best weapon is working together to show that in the whole scope of America, how absolutely insignificant these people are. Nothing hurts them more than that. No speech hate law will hurt them more than that. Around the time of the KKK incident, I had a phone call from a man who was part of the KKK group. He was ranting about something horrible we did to him, saying he had the right to free speech. I told him I agreed. I think that surprised him. He calmed down, and we had a reasonable discussion for a while. Then, and I can't remember what triggered it, I said, "Well, I agree you have free speech. I completely disagree with what you say." I told him calmly he was a racist and his views were insignificant. He didn't like that. He hung up. He didn't like being called insignificant. I sure like saying it. Martha was right. The First Amendment applies to everyone. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than hate. Thank you.